bet you recognize these Sweethearts candy hearts the second you saw them. If you want to show love in the sweetest, most classic way, it's hard to beat Necco Sweethearts. Tiny pastel hearts printed with cute little messages like "Be mine" or "I love you." They used to be one of the best-selling candies every Valentine's season, because honestly, not much screams Valentine's Day louder than heart-shaped candies with words on them. That said, lately conversation hearts have been getting pushed aside by those heart-shaped chocolate boxes, and sales have dropped by more than 24%. But even if trends change, Sweethearts are still a true American legend, tied to Valentine memories across generations. And here's the wild part. For over 100 years, these little candies were made in Necco's factories. So now, let's step inside the production line and see exactly how they make these iconic hearts. Necco wafers, Sweethearts candy hearts, Sky Bar. Those are some of the everybody knows it names in the world of nostalgic candy. And for a long, long time, a lot of it was made right in Revere, Massachusetts, at a place once called Necco World Headquarters. Inside the massive 810,000 square foot facility, Necco ran like a mini candy city, turning out more than 200 different products, from chocolate-covered pieces and mint sticks to the kind of candy that can bring your childhood memories back with one glance. Before World War I, conversation hearts weren't locked into the heart shape we know today. They came in all kinds of shapes: postcards, watches, baseballs, even horseshoes. But the one thing they all had in common was those short, quick little messages meant to be shared. On regular days, Necco was best known for its thin, round wafer candies. But once Valentine's season rolled around, the whole factory shifted gears. Sweethearts became the main event, produced on a massive scale. Since the start of the 20th century, it's estimated that more than 250 billion Sweethearts have rolled off Necco's conveyor belts. But not every part of the story is sugar sweet. Necco struggled and eventually shut down its original factory. In the end, Spangler Candy bought the Sweethearts brand, and those conversation hearts still make their comeback every Valentine's Day, like a seasonal classic for anyone who loves old-school romance and saying something sweet through. Words printed on candy. Now, let's step into the production area and see how these little candy hearts are actually made. The recipe is old in the truest sense. It's basically been around as long as the company itself, and the core ingredients have hardly changed. First up, cane sugar is delivered straight to the plant and fed into a grinding system, where it's milled into a super fine powder so it blends smoothly later. No clumps, no gritty bits. Next comes gelatin, staged in batches and ready for the mixing step. At the same time, ingredients that give the candy its structure and chew, like corn syrup and plant-based gum, are added to the lineup. And the part that makes it unmistakably Sweethearts is the flavor stage. The factory preps up to 6 different flavors, from the familiar classics to newer ones like wild strawberry, grape, and watermelon. Everything is weighed out and prepped carefully from the start, because once it hits the line, it's all industrial rhythm from there, fast, consistent, and precise, batch after batch. Everything starts with a little sugar. Actually, a lot of sugar. A standard batch weighs about 900 pounds, and it gets dumped straight into an industrial mixing tank. Right after that, cornstarch goes in to fine-tune the texture. It lowers moisture, makes the candy more crumbly and tender, and creates that slightly powdery bite you feel when you crunch into it. Next, workers add flavoring and food coloring to the tank. And each mixing tank only gets one flavor and one color at a time. Then, an automatic pumping system adds corn syrup, along with a binding solution made from plant-based gum and gelatin that's been dissolved in water. Once the mixing paddles kick on, the syrup and gelatin start clinging to every grain of sugar, and the whole thing transforms from a rough, grainy mix into a smooth, stretchy, dough-like mass. After about 8 minutes of mixing, they check the thickness of the candy dough. The goal here is to keep just a touch of moisture and build a stable structure. So when the candy gets pressed into shape, It won't crumble or crack. Just a few minutes later, it's like someone flipped on the lights. The color turns bold and the aroma pops instantly. Each flavor is mixed into its own separate dough with its own color. So later on, the line can produce those multicolored heart candies all in the same run. Everything is mixed slowly until it becomes smooth and creamy, almost like cake frosting. Once the batch is finished, it's discharged into holding bins. Since they run multiple colors and flavors, this step leaves them with bins of candy dough in a rainbow of shades, ready for the next stage. Once the dough is finished, it's transported, portioned into batches, and fed straight into the extruding and rolling machine. There are a million ways to say, "I love you." But here, Necco keeps it short and perfectly assembly line friendly. Workers grab each chunk of dough and drop it into the hopper. Inside the roller, the dough is pressed through a narrow gap and flattened into a sheet about 20 inches wide and roughly 1 inch thick. A light dusting of cornstarch is spread across the surface to prevent sticking, while the rollers keep compressing and pulling the sheet forward so the thickness and texture stay smooth and uniform. Next, the sheet moves into the stamping and message printing section. This is where the familiar phrases get printed using letter molds that have already been coated with a special edible ink. That ink is made separately. The binder is dissolved first, then food coloring is added slowly so the ink stays silky even and lump-free. Technicians fine-tune the flow so it grips the candy just right, leaving clean, sharp lettering that doesn't smear. There are over 100 different messages on the line, from longtime classics that have been around for decades, like "Be Mine," "Marry Me," and "I Do." And the factory almost never changes these iconic phrases. In just a few minutes, the candy is ready to be shaped. Heavy batches of dough are pressed non-stop, then stamped and printed in perfect rhythm with the machine. This cycle repeats around 140 times per minute, which works out to about 11,200 candies a minute and roughly 720,000 an hour. Next, the message printed sheet rolls into the cutting station. Here you'll see a set of cutters moving back and forth, with the star of the show being a heart-shaped cutting die and a small ejector pin built inside it. With each cycle, the die punches clean through the sheet, cutting each heart precisely so the message lands right in the center. The small heart cutters are arranged in rows, basically wrapping around each printed message, turning one long sheet of dough into a steady stream of individual candies. Right underneath the cutters is an open gap in the conveyor system. As the sheet passes over it, the freshly cut hearts drop straight down onto the belt below, while the leftover dough stays behind as a thin, mesh-like layer called webbing. And none of that gets wasted. The rejects and webbing are collected, dumped back into a hopper, and fed right into the rolling system again to make more sweethearts. At this point, the candies are still pretty soft and still holding onto some moisture, so they're sent onto a continuously moving conveyor that carries each little heart through a drying tunnel heated to around 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This step alone can handle up to 180,000 hearts per hour, quickly setting the surface and helping the candies start to hold their shape. They come out the end of the dryer, but they're still not ready to eat yet. Next, the sweethearts are gathered into trays, and thanks to the light starch coating and that slightly set surface, they can sit side by side without sticking together. Workers then stack these trays in a curing room, and this part is less baking and more slow and steady drying. Instead of blasting them with high heat, the plant uses controlled airflow and carefully managed humidity to pull moisture out gradually, so the candy dries evenly from the inside out without cracking or warping. The trays stay in the curing room until the moisture drops to about 0.75% to 1%. Little by little, thousands of tiny sweethearts are dried to perfection. Once the candy is finally dried to spec, the sweethearts trays leave the curing room and head into the mix it up for that true Valentine vibe step. At this point, each tray contains just one color and one flavor. But to make sure that when you open a box, you get a random mix of colors and messages, the factory dumps the batches into a mixer, where everything gets blended evenly so you don't end up with a whole box of just one type. From the mixer, all the candy moves into a massive holding hopper, basically a main funnel right before packaging. This is also the moment the sweethearts really lock into their final form. Crisp enough, the lettering fully set, and the colors nice and consistent. 6 classic colors and 6 classic flavors are mixed together to get ready for packing. Orange, lemon, banana, grape, cherry, and wintergreen. Once everything's thoroughly mixed, the sweethearts are poured onto a horizontal conveyor and sent straight into the packaging area. Here, the machine weighs out the exact portion, drops the candy into bags in timed cycles, and seals each bag shut in just a few seconds. The finished bags then move on to outer packaging, bundled into multi-packs, packed into cases, labeled, and made ready to leave the plant, carrying those tiny little messages out into the world. Whether you've already got a sweetheart or you're learning how to be your own, sometimes everyone needs a little sweetness to make the day feel a bit lighter. If you want to make someone smile, or you know that one friend who always demolishes the whole bag, send them this video. Thanks for coming along on this Sweethearts Factory tour. That's it for today, and I'll see you in the next episode of Food Tech Today.